So since we didn't get to today's lesson, I thought I'd make a video just reviewing so that we didn't miss out on anything. Our TEK that we're going over is still 7.3b. Our lesson target is that scholars will continue to multiply rational numbers, including integers, fractions, and decimals. And then we have a 4-question DOL of multiplying rational numbers. So it starts off with reviewing the integer multiplication and division rules that we learned. So you guys have to fill in the blanks when multiplying or dividing numbers with the same sign. So both numbers are positive or both numbers are negative. The answer will be blank. So take a second to think about what the correct answer will be. And then the second statement is when multiplying or dividing numbers with different signs. So one number is positive, the other one's negative. The answer will be blank. So take a few seconds to think about what your answer is going to be. So our answer for the first statement, when multiplying or dividing numbers with the same sign, the answer will be, it should be positive. And then for the second statement, when multiplying or dividing numbers with different signs, the answer will be negative. And then for this problem, this is the I do. A music club has 15 members. Each member pays monthly dues of $14.60. On the first day of the month, 8 members paid their dues. The remaining members paid their dues on the second day of the month. How much money was collected in dues on the second day of the month? Okay, so this is a multi-step problem. Basically, we first have to find out how many members did not pay or have not paid, I guess I should say. So step 1 is going to be figuring out the number of members that haven't paid. And then our second step is to figure out how much money in total was collected. So step 1 is figuring out the number of members that haven't paid. So I know that there's 15 total members. So we have 15, and I'm actually going to subtract the number of members that have paid. So 15 minus 8, and that is going to be 7. So I know that 7 remaining members have not paid yet. So now I can move on to my second step, which is finding exactly how much they haven't paid in total. So each member's dues, or each member has to pay $14.60. And since 7 members have not paid $14.60, I'm going to multiply. So then once I multiply, I have 0 times 7 is 0. 6 times 7 is 42. 4 times 7 is 28. 28 plus 4 is 32. And lastly, 1 times 7 is 7. 7 plus 3 is 10. So my answer is not going to be 10,220. I have to move my decimal place 2 places to the right. So in my answer, I'm actually going to move it 2 places to the left. So it's actually going to be right there. And so my answer for the remaining amount that was collected on the second day is B, $102.20. So this next activity was supposed to be group work. So, one group was going to take this left problem, one group was going to take this right problem, and then we were going to come back together as a class and have each group present their answer or their method of solving the problem. So these 2 problems are multi-step problems. Since we're not able to do that, though, we're still going to go through how to solve each of the problems. I do want you to take time to try to figure out, okay, how would I approach this problem? What steps would I need for group 1's problem, and what steps would I need for group 2's problem? Starting with group 1's problem, it says a student ran a distance of 3.5 miles each day for 5 days. Then the student ran a distance of 4 1/4 miles each day for the next 5 days. The question is asking, what was the total distance in miles the student ran during these 10 days? My first step is to figure out how many miles were run for the first 5 days and then for the next 5 days. So basically, I know that I have to multiply these mixed numbers and whole numbers. So we have 3.5 times 5 and 4 1/4 times 5. So there's multiple ways to approach this problem. The way that I'm going to approach it, or the way that I'm going to solve it, is turning these mixed numbers into decimals. So I know that our answers are in fractions or mixed numbers. It's just easy for me to work with turning mixed numbers into decimals. So if we think back to turning fractions into decimals, I just have to divide 1 divided by 2, right? And that gives me 0.5. But I have a whole number of 3, so that means that 3.5 actually becomes 3.5. Then I'm going to go ahead and multiply it out. So 3.5 times 5. Okay, so I know that 5 times 5 is 25. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 plus 2 is 17. And then I know that I have to move my decimal point one place. So in my answer, it's going to be moved one place as well, just in the opposite direction. So for the first 5 days, I know that the student ran 17.5 miles. Okay, now for the second 5 days, we have 4 1/4. So again, fractions are just another way to solve division problems or to write division problems. So if I divide 1 divided by 4, I get 0.25, and then I have 4 wholes, so that makes 4.25 times 5. So now it's easier for me to go ahead and multiply out decimals. So I have 4.25 times 5. Okay, 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 plus 2 is 12. 4 times 5 is 20. 20 plus 1 is 21. And then our last step is to move that decimal point. So we moved it 2 places in our problem. So in our answer, we're going to need to move it 2 places. So our decimal point is going to be in between the 1 and 2. So our answer is 21.25 miles. So now that we have our 2 distances in decimal form, we can easily add them. So this is where a lot of students make mistakes. When you're adding decimals, you have to make sure the decimal points are lined up. Okay, so we have 17.5. And then we have 21.25. So I need to make sure that my decimal places are lined up. And to do that, I'm just going to put a 0 next to the 5 so that there's 2 numbers after the decimal point for both numbers, so that it just makes it easier for me to calculate. Okay, 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. We have to drop the decimal point. 5 plus 1 is 8. 1 plus 2 is 3. Okay, from here we have 38.75. Our only answer choice with 38 is G. And if you divide 3 divided by 4, you get 0.75. So we know that 38 3/4 is equivalent or equal to 38.75. So our answer for this first problem was G. Now we have the second problem. So as I read the problem, think about the operations or steps that you would take to solve this problem. It says Fatima paid for 5 pallets of grass to be delivered. Each pallet of grass costs $129.95. Fatima paid $76.20 for delivery. What is the total amount Fatima paid? Okay, so here we have all decimals and whole numbers, so this problem is a little bit easier. So I'm going to write in this blank space right here, just because it has more room than writing just on the sides everywhere. So we have $129.95, And my keywords telling me that this is a multiplication problem is the word each. And it doesn't give us a total. It's asking us to find the total. So that's how we know we're multiplying, because sometimes division word problems will also have the word each, but they're asking you to find out how much each person paid for something or how much each person received in something. So that's how you know that's a division problem. So since we know that this is a multiplication problem, we're going to multiply the price by the number of pallets, which is 5. So to do that, we have 5 times 5, 25. 9 times 5, 45, plus the 2, 47. 9 times 5 again, which is 45, plus 4, 49. 2 times 5 is 10. 10 plus 4 is 14. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. Okay, so our answer is not 64,975. We have to move our decimal point 2 places to the right. So then in our answer, we're moving it 2 places to the left because we're moving it in the opposite direction, right? So our answer is actually $649.75. Not our final answer, but our answer to how much was paid in total for the grass. We have yet to calculate the delivery costs or to add that into our expenses. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to add together the $76 and the 20 cents. So when we're adding decimals, we have to remember to make sure that the numbers are lined up, because that's how we'll mess up our calculation and get the wrong answer. Okay, so when we have 5 plus 0, that's 5. 7 plus 2 is 9. We drop the decimal point. I'm going to change the color because it's kind of hard to see the numbers. 9 plus 6 is 15. So put the 5, carry the 1. We have 1 plus 4 plus 7, which is 12. Then we have 1 plus 6, which is 7. Okay, so now we've gotten to our final answer. Our final answer is going to be A, $725.95. So this next part is independent practice. So you can see that the questions are on the left side, the answer bank is on the right side, right? So after you answer a question, you need to make sure that it's included in the answer bank, or then it's not the correct answer. So once you answer 3 of the questions, you'll definitely know the answer to the last question if you got the others correct, because it'll be the last question, the last answer choice available. So as you can see, for all of these examples, we're multiplying fractions or mixed numbers and decimals. And so the easiest thing to do is turn everything into a decimal, because all the answer choices are decimals, right? So starting with this first one, we have half times negative 4.67. We have to turn half into a decimal. What is half as a decimal? You should be thinking about that right now, or at least thinking about how you would turn half into a decimal. So you should be thinking, I'm going to divide 1 divided by 2, and that gives me 0.5. And then we know that we have to multiply by 4.67. Before I actually start multiplying though, I want to figure out, is my answer going to be positive and negative? Because you can see that half is positive, but negative 4.67 is negative, right? So a positive times a negative is what kind of number? What is the sign of your answer? A positive times a negative is what? What you should have said is a negative. So I'm going to go ahead and show my work on the side right here. We have 4.67. Because I've already figured out that my final answer is going to be negative, I don't actually need to multiply it with a negative sign. So then we have 0.5. When you're multiplying decimals, you don't actually need to line up the decimal points. So that's the thing about multiplication, is that you don't need to line up the decimal points. You just have to make sure to include it in your answer at the end, in your product. Okay, so we have 7 times 5, which is 35. Then we have 6 times 5, which is 30. 30 plus 3 is 33. Then we have 4 times 5, which is 20. 20 plus 3 is 23. And I know you guys all know that any number times 0 is 0, so we don't really have to multiply a row full of zeros. So we have our answer here. What we don't have, though, is our decimal point. So in our problem, 4.67, we had to move our decimal point 2 places. But then for 0.5, we had to move it an additional place, so that's a total of 3 places. So in our answer, we're starting from the right and we're moving it to the left. So in the opposite direction, we're moving it 3 places. So 1, 2, 3. So our number answer is 2.335. But remember, it's going to be negative. So we have negative 2.335. And that is on the answer bank, so we know that that's correct. Okay, now on to the second one. Think about how you would solve this problem. Take a second. So you should have been thinking, oh, I have to turn that negative 2 fifths into a decimal. And if you do that, if you divide 2 divided by 5, I'm not going to take the time to do that right here, right now, but you're going to get 0.4. And because it was negative 2 fifths, as a decimal, it's going to be negative 0.4. So for this problem, we have a negative times a negative. So you should be thinking, is your answer going to be positive or is your answer going to be negative? So take a second to think about that. You should have said, or you should have thought that your answer is going to be positive. Now that we know that it's going to be positive, we don't need to write a plus, right? But we are going to need to write out the numbers to multiply. So we have 4.29 times 0.4. Okay, so from here, we can actually multiply. 9 times 4 is 36. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 plus 3, 11. 4 times 4 is 16 plus 1, 17. And again, we do not need to multiply with a row of zeros, so we're not even going to worry about that. We just need to make sure our decimal point is in the right place. So here, we're moving it 2 times and then 1 time, so that's a total of 3 times. So in our answer, we're moving it 1, 2, 3 times. So our answer is going to be positive 1.716, which is also on the answer bank. So we know that that's correct. Okay, now we have 1 1/4 times 5.9. So we still have to turn this 1/4 into a decimal, right? But we already know that 1 is our whole number. So we already know it's going to be 1 point something. It'll just be easy if you guys remember that half is 0.5 and 1/4 is always going to be 0.25. But of course, you can always divide 1 divided by 4 to get 0.25. So now that we have 1.25, we're going to have to multiply it by 5.9. So 1.25 times 5.9 . 5 times 9 is 45. 2 times 8 is 18. 18 plus 4, 22. 1 times 9 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11. Then we're going to cross out the numbers that we're not multiplying with anymore. So that just helps me so that I'm not, wasting my time. So I cross out the 9. So I'm going to put a 0 in its place. Then we have 5 times 5 is 25. Then we have 2 times 5, which is 10, but 10 plus 2 is 12. 1 times 5 is 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. Then we're going to add. Okay, 5 plus 0 is 5. 2 plus 5 is 7. 1 plus 2 is 3. 1 plus 6 is 7. So our very last step is to make sure that we include our decimal point. So for this problem, as you can see, we're moving our decimal point a total of 3 times. So then in our answer, we have to include our decimal point. So as you can see, our answer for this problem is 7.375. Okay, so we can see that our last answer is going to be negative 2.1, but let's say we didn't have this answer bank right here, right? Think about what is negative 3 over 4 as a decimal. So you guys can either work it out, or maybe you guys have it memorized because your past teachers made you memorize it. Okay, so you should have been thinking that it is equivalent or it is equal to negative 0.75. Okay, so now we can multiply negative 0.75 by 2.8. So I'm going to go ahead and do that on this side right here. I'm going to just write it out. I'm not going to actually do the multiplication yet because I have not yet figured what the sign of my product or my answer is going to be. So when we have a negative times a positive, since the signs are not the same, I know that my answer is going to be negative. And then now I can do the math. So then we have 5 times 8 is 40. 7 times 8 is 56. 56 plus 4 is 60. 0 times 8 is 0. Plus the 6 is 6. Now I'm going to cross out the numbers that I'm not using anymore. Again, it just helps me so that I don't waste my time and get confused and then get the wrong answer. So because I crossed out the 8, I'm going to put a 0 in its place. Then we have 5 times 2 is 10. 7 times 2 is 14 plus 1, 15. 0 times 2 is 0 plus 1 is 1. Now I'm going to add. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 0 again is 0. 6 plus 5 is 11. 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, our very last step is to move our decimal point 2 places, or not 2 places, to move our decimal point a total of 3 places, because 2 for 0.75 and 1 place for 2.8. So I'm moving it 1, 2, 3 places. So that's how I get my answer of negative 2.1. So that's pretty much it for today's lesson. We do have an extra practice problem that we're not going to get to, and then we have a DOL.